So now that we've made the title block, we need to create a interactive way to be able to look in here and find something in another kind of world. So this is going to become a sheet of paper. In order to do that, we're going to have to go to another file and paste it on another block. Okay. One thing that I kind of tell students about in class is the farmer on plywood. I don't know. When I search for this, sometimes it takes a little bit. But here's what I was kind of getting at. Hopefully, it doesn't open this in the photo booth thing. Like you see this at like the state fair or something else, right? What we're doing is we're making a piece of paper, but the piece of paper is interactive. So think about this plywood as the piece of paper, right? It's got the scene, which is the title block, and the information you want to see, which we just created. But then it's got these two holes, right? These two holes are going to be like viewports, what we're going to go ahead and install. And the viewport allows us to, right, like in this case, the viewport is the hole, which allows anybody to come up. So different people can come in, stick their heads in here, and get their picture taken. The viewport is going to do the same thing. It's just going to allow us to go ahead and put different pictures. Perhaps this drawing, perhaps this drawing, perhaps this drawing. So different pictures at different scales, all right? So what we're going to have to do in order to do that to start is start a new file. But what I would do is just start a template file. So I'm going to go to my website. I'm going to go to File Download. And in this case, and if you're not one of my students and you are looking at this right here, you can look at this URL, cadpchs.202.wixsite.com. That is my website that is here, and there are files that you can use that are shareable right here as far as templates, okay? This is our Doodle and Multiview template file, and this one is just a bunch of sheets of paper to get students kind of drawing in a confined area when they start just doodling and learning the software. So the first thing I'm going to do is erase that. So all of that goes away. Second thing I'm going to do, come down in the bottom left corner of the screen, okay, and you see this tab under the UCS icon, which is the XY, right? You see model. You move one to the right where it says layout. So I'm down here, it says layout. What I want to do is I want to delete this viewport right here. Okay. And the second thing I want to do is create my own viewport. Now, I don't know why I do this. I've had glitchy issues on my end. Maybe I've just never understood it fully with making a viewport or using a default viewport. But what I do is I'm going to click on my layer properties, click the drop down up here, and I'm going to call this viewport. If you're doing, and I'm going to call mine actually viewport 1. I'm going to change my color. Use a bright color is my suggestion, like a bright red or a bright blue or something else, and just say okay. All right. I could do multiple viewports where I'm taking certain elements from different drawings at different scales, and that would be fine too. Now, what I want to do is I have viewport 1 created right here, and that's the layer that I'm on, okay? So now I'm going to go ahead and pan. Now this is, let me explain one thing. This is a piece of paper. Think about the gray area as a desk. Think about the white area as a piece of paper. I can zoom in or zoom out, and I'm just changing the distance that I'm holding the paper away from me, or the distance I'm holding my face away from the paper, right? So not changing anything. It's just a blank sheet. I can also pan. I can move the paper around. Now, in a minute, when I put the viewport in and I go ahead and get some content in here, I can pan the content around on the paper. So it's almost like being able to lift ink and hold it in place like on a copy machine and then apply it wherever you want to. So what I'm going to do to get myself ready, I'm going to zoom in, and I want to get the biggest possible kind of version of this bottom left corner of the paper, right? This is the one I like to use to line it up, because now we have to paste our title block ink right down on this piece of paper. I'm going to go back to my title block, and I'm just going to go ahead and select everything. Once I've selected it, I'm going to go right click, come down to clipboard, and copy with base point. My base point Since I zoomed in on the bottom left of the sheet of paper, it's going to be the bottom left outside corner of my drawing. Okay, I'm go back here. I'm going to right click, clipboard, paste. So now you can see I've brought my drawing, right? My whole drawing is with me. Okay, I don't want to paste it on my desk or partially on my desk. I want to paste the drawing right on the paper. Now, one issue with that is there's no object snap on the paper. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this bottom left corner of my title block as close as I can, and I've found, because it's not perfect, if you can see here, I'm leaving like a tiniest bit of white page exposure on the bottom left. That is fantastic. Okay, you can also, when you do this, try a print preview. Okay, you can go File, Print, Plot Preview, and this will tell you clearly if you got it centered up. Okay, but I'm not going to go through that. So that's done. Okay, what I want to do now is type in the word viewports. If you're looking at my command window down here, watch the word that's going to come up. VIEW PORTS. One word, viewports. Okay, and hit enter. Right now, I want to come one down from this active model configuration. I want to choose single and just say okay. So I'm on my, now for this to work, you have to be on your viewport layer. Okay, I'm going to zoom in, and what I'm doing is I'm using the remainder of this rectangle, not the outer rectangle. Remember, this is a page border. This is the edge of your sheet. This is the edge of the visible border. So I'm going to come in here, select right there. Okay, and I'm going to come up and select right here. Okay, and now I have this viewport. So this is like the hole in the piece of plywood that you take the picture in. Okay, so this viewport is interactive. Right now, nothing is happening with it. But what I want to do is I want to paste my content in there. Okay, so here's an example of content. So this is the first drawing that we're going to do in my class, and we go copy with base point, and I come back to here, and I right click and I go clipboard, paste. Now what's happened here is I'm not pasting it on the paper. I'm pasting it actually on the desk, but the paper is still, so it's like stuck to it, but it's really not on the page. Okay, well, the reason for that, if you look at this viewport, the red viewport box that I just drew, it's a thin line, but when I double click in here, it is a bold line. Okay, so what I want to have happen is I'm going to undo. Before I put content in, I want to go ahead and double click inside of the viewport. If I double click outside the viewport, then it goes back to thin. Now, before there's content in here, what I don't want to do is I don't ever want to zoom in here, because if I double click, now I'm back in a model world, just like this. And we know that this goes to infinity, right? I can zoom and zoom and zoom and zoom and zoom, and now all of a sudden very easily lose my content. I can still see that it's right here, but I don't want to go ahead and take the chance on losing content. So when you're in here, don't zoom at all until you get stuff on your page. Okay, so I'm going to double click this so it's ready to import. Okay, or I kind of always think about this like in the safety position, like keep it safe and don't insert anything at all. So like leave this here until you need to put something in. So double click in the gray, now it's thin. Come on back over, find your content from this file. Wait a minute, that's not it. Okay, here's my content. Oh, I didn't even need to recopy that, but right click, clipboard, copy with base point. I'm going to want to stick this about right there. Okay, and I'm going to come back. So I picked it right in the middle of the content, double click, right click, clipboard, paste. And now all of a sudden you look and you go, well, this is no good, right? And people are going to want to go ahead and start moving stuff around and everything else. But I've spaced all of these things evenly, and I'm pretty convinced that I can change the scale, which is what I want to do. As a draftsman or any kind of designer, okay, What I want to do is give the person an actual scale, because if I happen to forget to label that number 2 inches, and that's a critical dimension, if the person who's, let's say, a machinist or someone who's creating this or programming a machine, if they know that my scale is 1 to 2, right, what they can do is come in here and they could take a measurement, and they could go from here to here. And knowing that it's 1 to 2, that means that it has to be half of its original size, meaning that if I go from here to here and that measures, let's say, 1 on a printed drawing, it really means it's 2 in actuality. Okay. So how do I make it scaled? Now, all I do is I single click the viewport. So I single click the red viewport. I right click. I'm going to come down to properties. Okay. So again, what's the trick? Single click the viewport, right click, come down to properties. Okay. I get a pop-up up here on the left. This pop-up is expandable. So what I'm going to do is come over and hover over the line on the right side of the box. I'm going to stretch it this way, and I need to get down here. It's covering what I need to get to under this miscellaneous tab. So I'm going to come down here, hover, and drag it down. Okay, this should stay formatted this way for future use. Okay, so right here, what I'm looking for is under the miscellaneous tab. Come on down, and you see it says standard scale. Well, right now it's custom. What custom means is it pasted it whatever size the computer's display would allow it to paste. Okay. It didn't change anything about my number, that my number is actually 6. We drew this full size. All it did was change its appearance. So what I want to do, so in other words, this is no scale at all. It's just whatever it happens to be. If I measured this, what's supposed to be 6 could be 2.871, which is not helpful. So what I'm going to do is click this word custom, click the drop down, and now you can see I have all kinds of scalable things. So like in architecture, we would use 1/4 of an inch equals a foot. Well, look at my drawing. It's really, really tiny, right? Well, because 1/4 of an inch equals a foot is a good scale when you're drawing a 50-foot house. 1 to 100, that's really, really tiny. 1 to 16, okay? So 1 to 1 is full size, but 1 to 2 is half size. So I'm going to try 1 to 2 and see how it works. 1 to 4, I want to give the person, in this case, the biggest version that I can possibly print that's at a specified scale. So I'm going to pick 1 to 2. I'm happy with that. Click the X and hit escape. Okay. Now, this is great, right? What happened is, and I'll just give one other for instance. This is perfect. Everything fits in here. Now, if I were to go ahead and double click in here, if I were to have zoomed, now I've reset it to a custom scale. So once you go ahead and get it to the actual size, not a bad idea is to go ahead, and so I would say don't zoom ever again. If you wanted to adjust the placement of it, you can pan and get it so that you kind of have this set evenly on the screen. Okay. One thing that I see students do quite a bit is, I'm going to go ahead and just grab this out of here for a second. One thing I see that happens from time to time is I'll see a student and their drawing happens to be like right here. Okay. And what they do then is they select it and they go clipboard, copy with base point, boom. They come back over here. Okay. They go ahead and select this, and then they go clipboard, paste. Okay. And they do the scale and everything else, but now their drawing is way set apart. Okay. So you can, I would say, make your corrections elsewhere. But the other thing you can do is you can actively draw in this model space. When this is bold, you can actively draw things. So what I'm doing is drawing a construction line at 3 inches, because what I do remember is that I spaced all of my drawings approximately, I think it was 3 inches apart. So now if I put that back there, I'm sound as a pound, and I can pan. Okay. I don't recommend for my students that you draw actively inside of the viewport, and then when I'm done, double click it. Like I said, last common thing you might want to do, if you're making sure that this is completely accurate, go down to properties and see, yep, it is showing that it is still a 1 to 2 scale, just to verify that you didn't zoom anything or anything else. Okay. In my class, if you are printing something, very easy, hit the drop down, come down to print, slide over to plot. The only other thing you have to do is where it says printer plotter, you're going to pick the correct printer, which is located on the back right whiteboard. There's a vinyl sticker that has the name of the printer, but it is 14. Oh, I don't have it on this computer. Okay, so just look for that if you're in my classroom. That is it. That's how to use a viewport. Oh, I almost forgot. Let's just say, now when I save this, I would save it as Multiview 1, and I would always say final or completed or something else. Now, what would I have to do if I were to go to, I don't want to ever have to go through this process again. So what would I do in this case? When I go to Multiview 2 for my next drawing, I'm just going to go ahead and click open Multiview 1, click the drawing. Let's say this happened to change to a scale of 1 to, let's say the next drawing was bigger and I had to print it, or I'm sorry, or it was the next, yeah, here we go, scale. Let's say the next drawing was bigger. Let's say I had to make it a scale of 1 to 5, okay? I set up my title block just like I want to, double click in here, get rid of your content, and come on back to whatever drawing you have that you're pasting in, right? Clipboard, copy with paste point, boom, come on back, clipboard, paste. Okay, you've inserted everything you need, and then all you have to do is change it to the scale that you want to assign it, right? You come back here, right click, properties, and then all you got to do is come down and change your scale right here, 1 to 5. Okay, and now I'm done with the second drawing. Now I would just save it Multiview 2. That is how to use viewports.